So I was looking at my Geekdom 101 Facebook page over at facebook.com/Geekdom101, and Mr. Brady Tyler Thring, I hope I said your name right, sent me a link to this article from Ranker Anime Underground, 16 reasons why Dragon Ball Z doesn't hold up no matter how much you love it, and wanted me to give my thoughts on it. Now, unlike Screen Rant, this article, and I've already looked through the article a little bit, it is pretty well written and there isn't too much misinformation. You know, every time I cover these Screen Rant articles, they're just complete nonsense, but this one's actually an interesting look. And really, if you look at this article from an unbiased perspective, if you step out of the fanboy bubble for a second, which is what I'm trying to do right here, you know, there are some good points brought up, but there's also a bunch of not so good points brought up. So I wanted to go through these reasons, these 16 reasons why Dragon Ball Z doesn't hold up anymore, and give you my thoughts to see if the guy's onto something or if I think he's out of his mind. And there's a bunch of different articles here that maybe I'll go through in future videos, but this is written by Stefan Roguet. I think I said his name right. It could be Roguet or Roguet, depending on how he spells it. So we're going to go through the different, you know, what he said and whatnot. You know, and actually in the very first paragraph here, he says that if you grew up in the 90s in North America, your first encounter with Japanese culture didn't come from Pokemon, probably came from Dragon Ball Z. Actually, I would more so say that, I mean, first of all, Sailor Moon blew up first, but if you grew up in the 90s, it may have been DBZ, it may have been Pokemon, it may have also been Power Rangers. Even though you didn't know it was Japanese, still, you know, that's really kind of the early kind of stuff. But he says that DBZ does not hold up when revisited today, that there are some cringe-inducing moments, which I'm sure there are. I mean, that's no question. So we're going to go ahead and look at that list here on this video. Now, before we go any further, I want to do a quick plug here. I have a brand new podcast, Geekdom 101 podcast, brand new. This is an audio podcast. It's available on iTunes, Google Play. It'll be on Spotify very, very soon in the coming few weeks. This is a new podcast I'm starting. The link is down below, geekdom101.libsyn.com, and I've already got 2 episodes up. These are, of course, audio-only podcasts, and you can subscribe on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Google Play, or you can check them out directly here on the geekdom101.libsyn.com. These are longer shows, like 45-minute shows, where I delve into all kinds of things, geek culture. I'm going to be talking about all kinds of, there's a lot of different topics, you know, not just anime. Lots of different things will be covered here. Episode 2 is with MJ about alpha movies that you need to see. And then first episode's already up as well, which is the episode with Quaman about life as a full-time YouTuber. Check both of those out if you haven't yet. And subscribe to the new podcast. It's absolutely free. And it's just extra entertainment if you have like a long commute or if you're bored at work. You know, I got more stuff for you to listen to, and I hope you enjoy it. I really do. So try it out. Geekdom101.libsyn.com. Now, let's get to the list. Okay, number 1 on the list is the Gray Saiyaman. Now, he's saying that the Gray Saiyaman does not hold up. And I actually, when it comes to this choice, the Gray Saiyaman, this is entirely up to it's subjective. This all depends on whether or not you like the Gray Saiyaman. And what I mean by that is this, and he basically says in the article that Gohan was the Carl Grimes of his day, transforming from annoying whiner to hardcore badass with literally one-hand destruction of Cell. And then he's saying that he became a lame character. When I did my recent Dragon Ball rewatch, which was last year, I actually watched the Gray Saiyaman episodes, and I enjoyed them more than I did when I was a kid. In fact, when I was younger and I had first seen the Gray Saiyaman episodes, I didn't like him. I didn't like Gray Saiyaman. And now, as an older person, I've come to appreciate that filler and really enjoy it for what it is. It's not all that interesting every episode, but it really is a lot of fun. And I enjoy it. I mean, I personally enjoy it. But again, this choice is really up to the eye of the beholder. I'm going to disagree on that there. I hit the down button there. I disagree on it. I guess most folks agree. If you agree, that's okay. Number 2, there's so much filler. Now, I actually disagree with this as well because there really isn't that much filler in Dragon Ball Z. There's way more filler in Dragon Ball Z than some other anime, and there's way less than some other anime. And one thing I don't like is when anime fans automatically assume that all filler is bad. You know, I had a discussion the other night actually with a couple of friends of mine. I talked to Frozen Particle, Geek List TV, I'm sorry, MJ, whatever, and we talked about filler in Dragon Ball Z and how, yeah, there's a lot of bad filler later on, for sure, but the early Saiyan Saga filler is absolutely amazing and does so much to add layers to these characters, to all the characters, even the villains. And I think that the early filler for like the Saiyan saga is great. It's not until you get to the Namek arc with the fake Namek and Bulma trying to get Dragon Balls from like a crab that the filler gets really bad. So I don't know if I really agree or disagree with this. Again, I'm not even gonna mark this because I'm not sure how I feel about it, honestly. Like I don't think the filler. I mean, there is some filler, but I don't think it's as bad as the guy thinks that it is. You know what I mean? I really don't. And he's pretty much talking about how some stuff is meaningless, like Goku going for a driver's license or, going fishing. Well, the fishing stuff is mostly done to kind of give the calm before the storm feeling. The driver's license episode seems to be one episode that people love, so I don't know. I don't know if I agree with him, but I don't fully disagree either, so I'm not even going to mark that one. Now, number 3, only a few of the characters actually matter. I do think that Dragon Ball, as it progressed, did obviously change who they put the focus on. Early in the series, it was all about Gohan and Krillin and Goku and Piccolo. And really, these guys right here, Tenshin Han, Yamcha, and Chaozu did get left behind. And as the series progressed, they shifted more over to Trunks and Vegeta, and then, of course, Goten and Kid Trunks. It's tough for me to really say if this is a bad or a good thing because I feel like a lot of shows do this, but I do somewhat agree with him that Toriyama could have used the side characters better. But again, that's very tough to say that they weren't used that great. But in the Buu arc, it's definitely something where they have a brand new cast and everybody else on the sideline. So I do agree with this. I'm going to mark it yes, but I don't know if I fully agree. I'm not totally sold on it. 4, dying doesn't matter. I think by the end of the series, by the Buu saga, yes, that is true. Earlier in the series, I think dying does matter. I think in the first couple of arcs it does, especially with Krillin dying, against Frieza, because it triggered Super Saiyan, which changed the entire story. You know what I mean? So that being said, I do agree with him that by the time we get to the Buu saga, death does kind of become a joke. They had to have Majin Buu finally blow up the Earth, and they had to use, Namek Dragon Balls and, old Kai, even before that, sacrifice his life to bring Goku back. He, dies and comes right back up. So, death does become a bit of a joke, and I'm going to get more into this later on in this article because, he talks about how, the series kind of became kind of a self-parody, and it does, in a way, but Toriyama did this on purpose. And honestly, I think Dragon Ball Z ended at the right time. I think when the Buu saga ended and with Majin Buu blowing up the Earth and then taking the entire, universe to help Goku win, I do think that it's a perfect ending. You can't get any bigger than that. And then GT came along, kind of did different things. Super helped by bringing in Beerus and showing the other universes, but it still didn't have that grand ending that Z had, with everybody helping out. But it does feel like if they had kept the series going, it would have gotten kind of long in the tooth, especially in Super. Now, we're not talking about Super here, but with Whis having the ability to resurrect people with his staff, I just don't see how the Dragon Balls aren't even that important anymore. Like now, if they have this guy as their friend who can resurrect people, why would you even be afraid of dying? So yes, I do agree with him. Most fans disagreed. I agree. Villains quickly become powerless. The thing is, he knew what he was doing here because I do agree with this. The Paikuhan filler that happened after the Cell Saga has always bugged me because I never liked the fact that they had Cell job the way that he did. Jobbing Frieza out is whatever. They did that correctly, I think, with Trunks to set up the next villain. The problem is that with Paikuhan, or Paikon, whatever you want to call him, he was not the next villain. He was Goku's next opponent, but he never stuck around. He was only there for 5 episodes, a couple of cameos later on, and a movie. So there was no point in jobbing Cell out after all this build-up for all these episodes. So I do agree with him that, yes, the older villains do become powerless quickly. Yes, but not every time is it a bad thing. But I do agree with him enough to where, yes, this scene in particular, it is just something but that's something that always happens in Dragon Ball. The previous villains are always weak compared to the newest ones. That's normal. The trope. I like this one. I'm not going to agree that it's a bad thing, but he says, dying permanently doesn't even matter because the afterlife is pretty sweet. I agree that the afterlife in Dragon Ball is pretty sweet unless you go to hell. But that being said, going to the afterlife and being kind of, going to heaven or whatever doesn't really seem so bad in Dragon Ball. And he's right. He says that there's tournaments in the afterlife and sports and things like that. So I agree with him in that the afterlife is pretty sweet, but I don't know if necessarily this is a I don't know if this is really a reason as to why the show. I'm gonna disagree. I'm gonna hit disagree. I mean, I agree with his point, but I don't think it's a reason for the show not to hold up. Now, number 7. Again, these guys who make these lists do this a lot. He's already discussed this earlier. See, he says useless side characters. Already earlier in the article here, only a few of the characters actually matter. It's kind of the same thing. It really is. Now, here we have, a lot of different characters. And I agree that Oolong, it does become kind of useless. But that kind of happened in Dragon Ball. Yamcha, I love Yamcha, but I mean, by the Buu Saga, he's pretty useless too. I think Roshi still can be the exposition character, and Bulma's never useless because she's always coming up with something. So, I mean, I don't think that's really a bad thing. I think you have to have side characters that don't do anything to kind of be there and just be like part of the cast. I don't know if I really feel that he's right on that, but I don't feel strongly enough to hit the no on that one, so I'm going to just skip it. The bad dubs. Now, I'm very surprised with this because, okay, the Dragon Ball Z dub, the original dub, has a lot of problems. I'm not a fan of the original dub. That's not a secret to me at all, to anyone who's been following me. The Kai dub, as far as like script and vocal performance, is way better. Maybe you don't like the edits. That's not even Funimation's fault. We're talking about just the actual vocal performance. But that old Z dub, one thing I do know is that a lot of people love that dub, whether it be nostalgia, which I think is very important, whether it be they love that Falconer score, which I've talked to the guys who did that score on this channel. I've interviewed them, all of them. It's not Bruce Falconer, it's actually 3 other guys. In case you're new here, Scott Morgan, Mike Smith, and Julius DeVosh, they did that music. But what surprises me is that he put this on the list. And one thing I will say is I don't know if it really deserves to be on the list because dubs shouldn't really affect the overall enjoyment of a show when you have the Japanese option. So I don't know if it's fair to actually put it on the list. But that being said, I'm actually surprised he put it on there because of how much that old dub is beloved. I do like that he actually understands that there are mistranslations and errors in the old dub. So I do agree with him on that. But it's not a reason, for me, it's just not a reason to say the show does not hold up. Even though in some ways the dub does not hold up because dubs nowadays are done completely different. They keep the original Japanese music. The scripts are better. Totally different era. You know what I mean? They're not played up for laughs, even though Super does do it from time to time. So I do agree that the dub doesn't hold up, but I don't really agree that it's... I mean, I don't know if a dub is worth talking about. Number 9, things escalate too quickly. I don't agree with this at all. Like, in some ways, I totally disagree because I think that Dragon Ball Z is very slow-paced, and I think that, especially compared to Kai, in Super. So I think that what he's saying here, I mean, he says that, the Super Saiyan forms are rendered useless by more powerful versions, but that's just a shonen trope. I mean, I disagree with this. This is not a good enough reason for this series to, to say that it doesn't hold up because shows nowadays are much faster. So I completely disagree with this choice, completely. Number 10, Fusion caused so many plot holes. Completely disagreed. There are no plot holes when it comes to Fusion. He brings up, like, the fact that Piccolo has 2 other Namekians inside of him. That's not a plot hole. Like, that's not a plot hole. Like, that's explained in the series and even more so out of the series in the guidebooks about how Namekian assimilation works. See what I'm saying? That's not a plot hole. And the whole idea of Vegito not defusing, which is what happened in the original story, and then he defused out of Majin Buu, that's not a plot hole either. Like, it's explained. And actually Super really explained it when they did the retcon, the Potara retcon. Majin Buu's stomach acid reversed the permanent fusion process. That's wrong. He is wrong on this because that's not what happened. That I've debunked that like ages ago. In the original guidebooks, it is stated, and I'm sorry, in the original manga, Goku says there must be something in the air. Majin Buu's stomach acid is not what defused Vegito. That is wrong. And then we found out in Super what the real reason was. So no, I mean that's not, no, dude. I already hit the down arrow on that. That's not a plot hole. 11, it became a self-parody. I think Toriyama did this on purpose. I think by the Buu Saga there was a lot more comedy. He went back to his Dragon Ball routes. The main villain's kind of a goof. Majin Buu, the ridiculous new transformations and power-ups that we got in the Buu saga, the the fact that death does become a joke. I do think that I agree with him on that it does become a self-parody. But I also, again, I don't know if that's really a con to say it doesn't hold up. I think Dragon Ball itself has become a self-parody. So I'm going to disagree on that one because I don't think it's a bad thing. 12, getting hurt doesn't matter. He brings up, now this is deceiving because he talks about, you see a picture of Piccolo regenerating, but he talks about like the Senzu beans and whatnot. I do agree with him. Yes, here I do agree that when you have Senzu beans, it does kind of kill the drama. Granted, they figured out ways to get around that by having Cell like take the beans in the Cell Saga. But when you watch like Resurrection F and they have Senzu beans, it's like, okay, well, everything's gonna be all right. You know what I mean? Like, and that is a problem. I do agree that they do rely a bit too much on Senzu beans. Sorry, I meant to put the other one. Yeah, I do agree with him on that. It does seem like they rely on them too much. Now, this one I do disagree on. He says everyone old is a pervert. That's a lot of anime. This is a trope in Japan that old men are perverts. Once again, I do not agree with this. I don't think it's a good point because that's just how the series is. Like that, an old guy reading pornography and it's funny is not really like, a reason why it doesn't hold up. I don't think it is. In fact, in some ways, that comedy is kind of refreshing compared to the comedy that we have now. I mean, yeah, I guess maybe in the world that we live in now where, sexual humor is kind of risky because everybody's very overly sensitive nowadays, maybe, but that doesn't make it a bad thing if I personally choose to not be offended. See what I'm saying? It's a cartoon. It's a manga. Who cares? It's outdated. See, I don't know if I agree with this, and I guess he's talking about, the whole Mr. Popo thing being a black manservant. Mr. Popo's not a black manservant. Mr. Popo is really based more on Middle Eastern / Indian culture. I mean, he is black, but people have tried to use this against Toriyama, saying that he's a racist, and that's just utterly ridiculous. He's just, he's supposed to be, I mean, he's a caricature, for sure. It definitely, that part is somewhat dated, but I don't think it matters. You see what I'm saying? I don't think it matters. If he's talking about Mr. Popo specifically, then I do somewhat agree that maybe this wouldn't fly nowadays. But Popo's also in Super, so they didn't write him out or anything. But I also don't think the entire series is outdated at all. See what I'm saying? But if he's talking about specifically Popo, I agree. So I'm not even going to mark that because he's not really clear on it. The fusion dance. I don't really understand why this is supposed to be outdated. He says that's very goofy. But again, it's supposed to be goofy. Toriyama wrote it goofy on purpose. The Buu Saga, there are parts of the Buu Saga that are very, very serious, and there are other parts that are just a complete gag. And I disagree with him in that this is not, to me, it doesn't hurt the series' longevity at all. People still love the fusion pose. And then this is the last one on the list. It's been memed to death. Completely disagree, and I'll tell you why. Yes, it has been memed to death. But what isn't memed nowadays? Everything nowadays is memed. Great TV shows, great movies. Infinity War was a great freaking movie. There were how many Thanos memes? It's just something that the world does now, and I think it's really stupid. I would have just left this off the list, man. There is no reason as to why this is on the list. Because of what happens as far as meta stuff goes, like things outside the Dragon Ball actual like series, you know what I'm saying? Outside the manga and anime, there's just no reason to put this on the list because it doesn't affect the series at all. It's not a creative decision that Toriyama and Toei made back in the day. They didn't know it was going to get memed. Hell, the internet wasn't even a thing when this show ended. In 95, the internet was very different than what it was now. There were no memes. So, no, like, that's not even fair to the series. I don't know how something being memed has taken away from what it is. I mean, yeah, there are tropes in Dragon Ball that can be made fun of, but that's everything. There's tropes in everything that can be made fun of. And, I don't think this hurts Dragon Ball Z at all. So that's my opinion of this list. Again, not anywhere close to as bad as the stuff from Screen Rant, but still some good points brought up about some issues with Dragon Ball Z. But I disagree with him overall in that. I think that DBZ does still hold up. Do I wish there were some, maybe faster pacing and whatnot? Possibly, but I still love the series, and when I rewatched it again last year, I still loved it. It still hit me on all the right emotional moments, emotionally. And I still got excited to watch it. So I think it does hold up. I think it really does. So Anyways, that's my opinion. Let me know yours. Do you think Dragon Ball Z still holds up? Look at it from an outsider's perspective and let me know what you actually think. I thank you for watching this video. Remember to check out the Geekdom 101 podcast down below, and I'll talk to you soon.